At the New Jersey SBDC Network, our mission is simple: to help businesses grow and succeed. Our consulting, training, and information services make it easier for businesses to reach their potential. Whether you're currently in operation or just starting out, we have the right tools, resources, and expertise to help you succeed. Visit us online to get started on your path to success today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sakoa Bell. I am an event coordinator for the NJSBDC at Rutgers-Newark. And on behalf of Dr. Tendai Ndoro, the regional director, I would like to welcome you all to our Navigate Business Disruption and Manage Change webinar. For those of you that are unfamiliar with the SBDC, it stands for Small Business Development Centers. And here at the New Jersey Small Business Development Centers at Rutgers-Newark, we serve as the premier provider of business training and technical assistance services to establish small businesses, startups, and as well to entrepreneurs. We are one of 12 centers in the NJSBDC network, and we service those in Essex County. Our center is hosted by the Rutgers Business School and funded through a public-private partnership agreement between the Small Business Administration, Rutgers University, and the New Jersey Business Action Center. Our mission is to help entrepreneurs as well as business owners start and grow sustainable, successful businesses through the delivery of one-on-one business consulting, training, and technical assistance programs. Now, these services are provided to you at no cost and are paid for by your tax dollars. So if you or your business is located in Essex County, our website is www.rnsbdc, and it is located on the bottom right-hand corner of the slide. On this website, you are able to request counseling and fill out the information you are needing for your business, as well as the help you are seeking. And within 24 to 48 hours, a consultant will reach out to you for an assessment. Now, for those of you that are not in Essex County, our other website, our headquarters website, is www.njsbdc.com, and that stands for New Jersey Small Business Development Centers. And on this website, you can type in your county, and it will refer you to your local SBDC office. For the benefit of everyone attending today's webinar, the audio has been muted, and we will be taking questions via the Q&A feature here on Zoom. Now, we do have the chat feature on, but the Q&A feature will help us to remain organized, as well as have all the questions and answers in one designated area. So please feel free to post your questions, and we will do our best to respond during or at the end of the webinar. A copy of the presentation slides, along with a video recording of this webinar, will be emailed to you within 48 to 72 business hours of the end. So you can always refer back to this information long after the webinar has ended. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you our presenters for today's presentation, Jeannie Rock-Bailey and Karen Pashota. Jeannie is the president of Rock-Bailey Enterprises and an SBDC consultant here at the NJSBDC at Rutgers-Newark in the areas of human resources management, state and private sector certifications, and supplier diversity contracting. Karen Pashota is the CEO of KQ Consulting and an SBDC consultant here at the NJSBDC at Rutgers-Newark in the areas of strategic management, business planning, and business operations. Now, without further ado, I will now turn today's presentation over to our two presenters.
Thank you so much, Takoa. It is a pleasure to present this new content as part of the SBDC's CARES Act webinar series, bringing new information and vital information to small business owners and entrepreneurs in New Jersey as they try to adapt and change to a constantly changing marketplace, especially given the COVID-19 pandemic. And it is my pleasure to work with Jeannie Rock-Bailey. So, hi, Jeannie, good to see you.
Hi, good to see you too.
I'm gonna, Takoa, I'm gonna share my screen. So I think you just stop screen sharing first. There we go. All right, and let me share my screen with our slides for today and share. There we go. Ginny, can you see those?
Yes, I can. I can.
Okay, good. All right.
Excellent.
So let's get started. Hold on. I didn't advance to the next slide.
There should be two arrows. Okay, great.
There we go. All right. Ginny, do you want to dive right in?
Sure. I mean, our focus on this was really to make sure that we identified and our participants identified with what these disruptors are, and to really strike out the notion that this is a normal period for us. I mean, I think that's one of the things that Karen and I were really focused on, is to allow, is to not just allow, but to have you think about what has happened to our businesses during this interruption. Lockdowns, limited reopening, scarce customers and scared customers. And I really thought that was a good one, Karen, because I never thought about them as being scared, but because of the situation, they were and continue to be interrupted supply chain, changing restrictions and gradual reopenings. I also think that if you look at the listing of these changes and how we've had to pivot, you can see that since we started this, things have changed. And we were able to add on and broaden this presentation because of the changes that have occurred, especially when you think about gradual reopening. We always thought that that was going to happen when we started this, but we didn't when we started this presentation, but we didn't think we could see it. And now I think we begin to see it. So, I mean, I think that's the biggest part about this webinar and what we want to share with our participants.
I also think that it's really important for business owners across the board to recognize that they're not alone. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted businesses across the board, businesses of all sizes, businesses across all industries, the hospitality industry, retail, service businesses, education. I don't think that there is a sector of the economy that has not been touched by the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the pandemic has required businesses to be flexible in the face of tremendous uncertainty. And that's incredibly difficult. We're always telling business owners to plan and execute their plan, but when there's so much uncertainty, it makes it so much more difficult to plan and execute that plan. The need to adapt and change has been bearing down on businesses for a year now, and is still required as we move forward, as people get vaccinated, as we gradually reopen and try to figure out what the business world is going to look like.
Absolutely. I also think that paramount to this is the fact that businesses have watched other businesses fail, and yet they still were able to sustain themselves. And so now they're looking at, well, how did we do this? And what does the future look like for us in the limited in our limited capabilities that we have? But they survived.
And when we think about what that financial impact has been on businesses, many have suffered reduced revenue because of PPE requirements and changes to their business. They've had increased costs. They've sought out emergency funding. That emergency funding has become available and then become oversubscribed and closed and is suddenly not available after all. There have been varied requirements for different pieces of emergency funding. There have been different application methods to access that emergency funding. It's been very confusing. There's been emergency unemployment benefits for employees, but then sometimes those have expired. So there's been so much disruption, and change has come at small businesses at a really dizzying pace and smacked them upside the head. And small business owners have had to adapt at lightning speed or suffer real financial consequences.
I think what's also paramount in this is that the businesses have had to adjust with the reduced revenue, but then when called upon to apply for these programs, they didn't have the wherewithal to do it. So they're losing money, and then when people say, when SBA and the government said, well, we have some money for you, they didn't have the skill set and maybe the documents available to apply. So it just gave them another mark, because some of them weren't even able to get a piece of that during the first wave because they didn't know how.
And the rules changed, right?
And
there were businesses that were not eligible for the PPP early on, and then the rules changed, and even more recently changed again. And so business owners have had to try to keep pace to changes in their business, changes in access to capital at an incredible pace that has put a tremendous amount of stress on all of them. And so for all the business owners that have managed to manage their business effectively and are still open, kudos to all of you, because it has been quite a roller coaster of a ride through the course of the past year.
Mm-hmm.
So when Ginny and I were talking about what businesses need to do in order to continue to navigate, in order to continue to adapt to the changing marketplace, because we've certainly gone from normal through a year of pandemic, through a year of hardship, and are now attempting to navigate out the other side and hopefully get back to where businesses can be in a better position to grow and to thrive. We realized that communication really is one of the important tools and keys to that, especially in a changing marketplace and in the face of a certain level of continued uncertainty. Mm-hmm. So we thought about communicating to different constituents, different groups of people who touch your business in different. So we're going to walk through different groups of people and how you relate to them and what you communicate to them and what they communicate to you, and how that's important for your business and how you can use that to manage your business and hopefully strengthen your business as time goes forward. So it's really important that you talk to your customers about how your business has changed. Maybe you've had to change the mix of products that you offer. Maybe you've added or subtracted services. Maybe you've changed the selection of products that are available, services that are available. Maybe you've had to change the actual method that you actually sell your product or service. Certainly, more and more people have had to work from home. We went from face-to-face meetings to people having to do meetings on Zoom, and we've all learned how to function better on Zoom. Maybe you had to change the way you deliver a physical product to your customers. Maybe you have to ship it where before people came into your store. Maybe that has changed how quickly you can get a product to a client based on, what's the timing. If before they would just come and purchase and walk out of your store, maybe now you have to have it delivered, and that changes the timing, which depending on your product could affect the product itself. Maybe you've had to alter your pricing. That could be because of increased costs for PPE or increased costs for shipping. It could be because you've had to, because you've experienced changes in pricing of raw materials and you had to pass on some of those costs to your employees. And now you're thinking about, how do I rebuild, and what do I need to do in order to reconnect with customers and get my customers excited once again about the products and services that I offer. Communicating with your customers is vitally important, so they know whether or not you're back, so they know what's new or different, so that they know what changes are still considered temporary in the face of the continued pandemic, and where the infection rates are, or what changes you might have implemented that are perhaps better for your business, and you may think of making permanent. So how are you ramping back up? It's really important that you communicate these things to your customers.
Right. I mean, I think when I think about us putting this together and how we thought that that was just such, you know, a normal thing for business to say, oh, well, let me reach out to my customers and let them know where we stand. We ultimately found out that that was not, you know, a top on their list. Their top on their list was to make sure that they were sustainable. But it's so important that while you're doing that, you stay in contact with the customer, because the customer is also experiencing their own list of hardships because of this situation. And I guess, Karen, the most important thing with this slide is just to remind them of all of the different checklists that they need to have when telling their client, then telling their customer about their need and their status. Because without that, this customer can assume so many things, which you don't want them to do. You want them to have the facts.
I agree. And I think that so many business owners have just been functioning on doing, on managing and holding on and surviving the pandemic, that they haven't thought about how important it is to make that extra effort to communicate with customers, to connect with them, and to let them know this is what's going on with my business.
Right. Right.
So let's move on to talk about communicating to employees. And since this is your area, Jenny, I'll let you start this slide.
Well, you know, we can only speak to these things through experience, because we are small business owners ourselves. And as these things were unfolding, because I like to refer to the actual time that we were writing this, we thought of this and what was going on. Things like the changes in hours and compensation were paramount to people, especially if they knew that, especially if they were an essential business, they knew that they were going to be open, but they didn't know what hours or what kind of money, if anything, if any changes at all were going to take place. So it's always better to bring that up so they don't have to worry about it. And this is all part of the plan that employers should have, owners should have for, I think it was devastation plans that you should have, in case of a devastation. These are the plans that you should have, and these are the things that you should think about. And then with the changes in hours and compensation, invariably became a change in what they did, whether they changed a shift or extended an hour or shared a full day. Those changes should also be made in a job description. So it says it's temporary based on what they're doing and based on the situation, but it just shouldn't be something that you relate to them. It's your time to amend the job description, even if it's just putting it down in writing that this is the new plan from X day to X day, or until we're out of this. So people have a clear understanding of what their responsibilities are. And it also brings your employees to work with a sense of confidence that they could really go on autopilot, because their lives were so turned upside down because of this situation as well. Changes to how the business operates, the use of the PPEs, touchless transactions, different delivery methods. If you don't communicate these things to your employees, you leave it up to them to figure it out on their own. And that's where the danger comes in. And there's so many responsibilities that owners have to not only their business, but for the people or to the people that they work with. And I think the use of PPEs was really paramount because so many businesses that didn't have to wear a gown or special shoes or whatever had to do it now. And when we also talked about the touchless transactions, I have clients who they all shared telephones, desk phones. And so they would go from one cubicle to the other and touch their person's phones. Well, we had to tell them those days are over. You use your own phone. You use the system that allows you to transfer a call. Just don't come over and pick up my phone to answer, your call or to answer a question. But these were things that had to be learned. So in terms of the word normal, I think those kinds of changes immediately told the employees that this is a different situation. Now the office has changed and how we work in the office has changed if you were there. If you're remote, you really had to make sure that you had all the technology and all the documents, hard documents, which people still had in terms of books, that you needed before you left, because your access to your office was impossible in most cases. So, and these are just some of the examples that owners had to communicate and should communicate to their employee when there is a change. Um, the changes for temporary and permanent is huge because it definitely deals with money. And it also deals with benefits because permanent obviously get more benefits than others. So that's why when this was really going on, states said there are things that had to be grandfathered when it came to benefits, attendance, and vacation. But employees weren't reading that. You have to communicate that to your employee, whether staying on a temporary status was quote unquote temporary and would not affect their benefits, or that it would affect their benefits in such a way. And what happened, which was really great, is for paid sick time, they didn't change that. They just added a little caveat to it. So certain things couldn't happen to you if you were on sick leave or if you had to take a sick day. You could feel confident in doing it and not being placed in another category, especially if you're on the fringes. But if you don't communicate these things to your employee, they don't know. They know they're in trouble with their days, and they may not want to communicate it to you, but it's better for you to step up and just say, look, during this time, there's going to be a change, and these are the changes. Retaining staff and their support and loyalty. I mean, I think that's a huge issue because I'm a big proponent in how you treat your staff. You treat your staff, and I can't even say the way you want to be treated. You treat your staff as if they are a valued member of your company, and without them, you can't move your needle. That's how you treat them, with respect and kindness. And with that, there is a sense of there's a sense of loyalty that so many employees have towards their employer when they're just treated that way. And we saw it happen with our own clients whose boss, whose owner, employer was kind enough to say, I'm going through a struggle too. We're going to go through this together. Whatever the conversation was, to let them know that they were valued. And if we have to change the schedule so we can keep you, we'll do it. And I think that's a valuable form of communicating to your staff.
Should employers also be thinking about their employees might need if there are changes to the workplace that maybe they're using new technology in the workplace and employees might not be familiar with it? Is that something that employers should be thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the job description, I think this because I'm in human resources, but we have to counsel them on all of those issues, Karen. That's a good point, because during these times, employees are thinking about their families or their lifestyles. And all times, the only place really that an employee can feel safe is at work, because they know that their employer is taking care of those necessities. Their personal phone calls or their bill collectors are not going to call them at work, those kinds of things. So when these disruptions happen, it presents more issues to them. So it's incumbent upon us to bring it up. And in order to do that, Karen, as we know, you have to have a plan. You have to have a plan, and not your business plan. Maybe it's an operating plan. But are disaster concerns in a business plan?
Not usually. Disaster preparedness is really important to small businesses that are overlooked and, oh, I'll do that later. And unfortunately, oftentimes later never comes. And I think it's particularly vital for small businesses because often they are dependent on some key people, often the owners or other, that if something happened to them, there's so much institutional knowledge and know-how and that resides in that one person, that the business can really struggle if that one person is missing. And that might be, we're very fortunate with telecommunications, that even if that person was quarantining because of COVID, they were often still available by Zoom or phone, or email, even text. But disaster preparedness is really important because tomorrow isn't promised to any of us. And unfortunately, that's one of the lessons of the pandemic, is that many people have lost loved ones. And a small business can find itself really struggling to function if they lose, one key employee who is just the lifeblood and the center of the business, and has the authority to do things and has the knowledge of how everything operates and how it all comes together. They'll often find themselves scrambling if that person is absent from the business. So disaster preparedness should be part of a good business plan in a perfect world. I also have one other question. So many people, because of the pandemic, ended up working from home. And things gradually reopen, people will start going back to the workplace. Should business owners be thinking about what kind of lead time currently work from home employees will need in order to prepare to return to the workplace? Maybe they have young children and daycares, not all schools have been open. Transportation was reduced in terms of frequency and volume. And so how should small business owners think about those kinds of issues, which are not directly their responsibility, but will affect how their employees come back to the workplace?
Well, I'll take it from my client base. What we're doing is for clients that are in smaller communities, the owners are definitely working with people that are on planning boards, communicate the Board of Education to see what their schedule is to meet the needs of the employee. But they're thinking about, number one, how many people will want to come back to work, because there's nothing that says that they have to be vaccinated. They have to do anything. So the employer has got to determine how many people are going to come back to work. So then they can start to make the necessary preparations to get the space ready for them, right?
Right.
Then they have to survey their employees to find out what their personal needs are, to determine how they can assist them in it. And this for me is going to be so cool, because it's not crossing a boundary, Karen, but it's something that we always should have done to make sure that our employee base was whole. So now the natural disaster is kind of forcing us to do that, because they also know that there are employees that are not going to come back. And to my knowledge, I have not heard whether you come back to work or you're terminated. So they're going to have like two different sets of books on employees: those that determine to stay remote and those that want to come into the workforce. So again, in terms of preparation, I think it's incumbent upon us, even you and I, as owners and employees, for the people that we have that work for us, to let them know that a change is coming and how can I help you. But you have to give them a checklist. You can't leave it up to them to give you all the information that they need, because the checklist will also allow the owner to basically tell the employer, these are the things that I can do. You know, I'm telling you, these are the things that I can do. Not saying that, but the checklist is basically inferring that. Let's look at your child care. Let's look at your family situation, if your husband or partner is going back to work. Let's look at all of these kinds of things. And then there may be an other, but at least if you give them a checklist, you have a blueprint to work with as an employer. And it's important, very important.
I'm hearing from a few different sources about different models that employers are considering of having, half staff come in one week and the other half staff come, so that people can work from home alternating weeks, or even alternating days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, one week, Tuesday, Thursday, the other week. I'm hearing, a lot of different models that are being explored as employers think about how to welcome employees back in a way that works for both the employer and the employee, and allows everyone to feel safe, even as the pandemic is still out there and people are still struggling to get vaccinated and want to remain safe. So lots to think about with respect to communicating to employees.
A lot.
But let's move on to thinking about communicating to suppliers. I think that this is a level of communication that a lot of small business owners often overlook, simply because they feel like they put in an order and their supplier hopefully delivers, and that might have been the reality before the pandemic, but certainly because of the pandemic, there have been changes in customer demand and changes in availability. So you may need to have a conversation with your supplier to let them know about changes in demand. And you may say, okay, I'm not going to carry these things, or I'm going to carry less of a certain product. I'm going to change my product mix. Maybe you've added, face masks. I've seen all kinds of businesses, everything from clothing stores to office supply stores, and pretty much everything in between in terms of supplying face masks. So maybe you've added products that suddenly have been, that you had not carried before, that make sense for you now. Suppliers should also know about changes in your staff or any process that you might have had to implement in terms of how you take in product. Maybe there's been a change in your staff and somebody who is authorized to place orders is no longer part of your staff. Maybe there's somebody new who's authorized to place orders. Your supplier needs to know who it is that they accept orders from. And I think it's also important, communication is a two-way street. So just as much as you need to tell your supplier what's going on with you, it's really important that you listen to what they have to say, because they may tell you that, I'm able to deliver this to you, but suppliers. And so I don't know if you need more of this particular product or this group of products, you might want to order right away because the supply is dwindling. Or maybe there's something new that's comparable that they're familiar with, that they might say, oh, you might want to switch from carrying this to carrying something else that's comparable. They can tell you what they are hearing and seeing further up the supply chain, and that can be really helpful to you as you decide the best way to manage your business. You may also want to talk to them about how much lead time they need in order to respond to market changes. If they tell you that something is in limited supply, then you may need to order sooner in order to be prepared. Or you may need to change, what you're ordering. Or they may say, listen, I can get it for you, but it's 3 to 6 months out because it's hard to come by. So listening to what they have to say can help you manage your business more effectively and help you make decisions on how you manage your business. So the other thing that you can do is develop relationships with alternative suppliers. And that way you have someone else to go to. I was working with a small business that required a natural agricultural product from abroad for their business. And she had a primary supplier, the supply is drying up and it's going to be a while before I can get more. Or he would say to her, I set some aside for you. You're one of my best customers. I set some aside. So tell me when you need it and I'll deliver. And she was like, oh, okay, I'm going to jump on that. I'm going to buy it right away. But she also knew that because this was a natural product that was in weather, changes in climate, changes in crops, that sometimes she needed to go to an alternative supplier. And she would buy small quantities regularly from another supplier so that she had a relationship with them, so that if her main supplier said, listen, things are backed up and it's going to be a while before the next shipment comes, she would say, okay, well, keep me posted. I definitely want to buy some from you. And she had someone else that she could turn to say, hey, I'm looking to buy. Do you have any of this product? So having that kind of flexibility and having an alternative supplier was really vital to her managing her business and being able to produce the products that she made, especially when things that she needed were in short supply. It really helped her ensure her supply, and it gave her choices and it gave her options when times were more difficult.
So, isn't this aren't these all good examples of how you can use something as horrific as this pandemic to make you be a much better business owner because of the things that you learn? Because all of these things that we're talking about, really, we should implement in our business anyway. We always should have an alternative because we don't know what's going to happen. We always, should make sure that the details about how we run our business are always communicated to our suppliers, our customers, little things like the change in hours, because this is huge. And all of our businesses don't have Google My Business, where you go on and you can see if they're open or closed. They don't have that. And I think that's what's such a benefit about our kind of programs, because we're talking to businesses in general, but we're really talking specifically to those solopreneurs, entry-level entrepreneurs. I want to say smaller businesses that are our catchment number. So, because you've got so many things that you're thinking about, and it's important that you add this to it. Become part of an organization that can provide information like this to you, whether it's through a membership or just through a networking group or a professional group, because this, there are going to be more disruptors, and we just don't want to make the same mistake again. You can make another mistake based on what the disruption is, but try not to make the same mistake, because you'll lose time and money.
Absolutely.
And you may lose your business. You may lose your business.
Absolutely. So, and actually the example that I gave was pre-COVID, that this woman was having difficulty getting supply. But as a smart businesswoman, she realized the need to be in touch with multiple suppliers. And, to your point, industry associations can provide a level of support. If someone says, I only have one supplier and I'd love to have another one, but I don't know who to turn to, in an industry association can open up connections to other suppliers, to other opportunities for you. So it's always good to be part of some sort of industry association.
I think that, and I don't want to belabor, this point, but I think that for our businesses that are doing business that are global and, in their products and services, I think they definitely have to think about how they can get that product or have it made in the States in the event that something happens like this where we could not travel. I know my one of my businesses, she's definitely thinking about a production house in the state that could also reproduce her items. I mean, even though it's more the stress that this disruption had on her life and her business, it's worth saving to pay for this stateside company than to lose the business altogether. And these are just things that you have to think about, incorporate into your conversation about your business.
That's a great point. Yeah, having things manufactured here in the U.S. Where domestic travel is easier and domestic shipping is easier, would have made a big difference for a small business that was dependent upon something from abroad that they just couldn't get for a while there. So let's move on to think about communications from competitors. With your competitors, it's important. Remember, we said communication is a two-way street, right? It's not just about what you're saying, it's also about what you're hearing, what you're learning, what intelligence you're gathering. You need to be paying attention to what your competitors are doing and to listen to how they're communicating with the market, because they're most likely facing very similar challenges to what you are. How are they adapting? Are there approaches there that you hadn't considered that if it's working for them, can you implement something similar? Is there good reason to implement something similar? That could be helpful and supportive to your business, or it might even spur you to think of a different approach that would be even better for your business. I think it's really important to pay attention to what competitors are doing and how they are adapting to the same forces that are affecting your market. I think it's really important to welcome change to your business, because change is constant, and hopefully you'll get back to a place where you can grow your business effectively. But even growth is change, and it's about thinking about how you can adapt better and faster than your competitors. Networking with competitors can yield important industry information, again, being part of an industry association. And that can also bring about opportunities for you to be a leader in your community, a leader in your industry, being part of organizations that bring together business owners, whether it's your local chamber of commerce or some sort of geographical business alliance or business organization, can help you find opportunities to partner with other businesses and therefore stand out in comparison to your competitors, or market yourself in a way that your competitors are. So I think that paying attention to what's going on in the marketplace, I know it's really tempting to just say, you know what, this has been really hard. I just need to keep my head down and keep working really hard in my business. But it's important to see what else is going on and think about how that, as a business owner and as an entrepreneur, adapt and change and manage your own business.
Okay, Karen, I also think that when we were putting this together, we really had a chance to see where the competitor as a title took a whole different meaning, because it wasn't so much as competition over the same customer, over the same product. It was going to your competitor so you could stay alive.
Right.
So they could assist you in maintaining your business. And especially in a small business community where maybe there are 2 or 3 businesses that are selling the same or similar products. You just want to make sure that these kinds of tactics that you implement now you implement at other points of the relationship. Because whether it's a fire, whether it's a flood that they're having, we tend to help our neighbor. So what we're also suggesting is, as a business, you help your business. You know, you help them because you don't know when you'll need the help, but with this disruption, they all needed help, maybe different kinds of help. So just considering the fact that you may have to go to a competitor, whoever it is not a negative. It's a positive because you may have something that he needs as well. And communication is this whole, we should have changed the topic to just communicating, you know, because small business communicating, because communications is so key. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to step out there. Because you just don't know how that will broaden your horizons as a business owner.
Yeah, you don't know what you might learn. You might learn something really helpful, and it doesn't mean that you have to give away your own, you know, secret sauce. But I think that, so for instance, I live in a small town in Essex County, and there is a bakery that has been here for a number of years and is much loved. And a couple of years ago, there was news that a new bakery was coming to town. And everyone said, a new bakery? We don't need a new bakery. We have a fabulous bakery. We love this bakery. Why do we need another bakery? That bakery is not going to survive. Well, that bakery just celebrated its 4th anniversary, even amid the pandemic. And the two have found ways to coexist. They have different products and different specialties. They have, there is some overlap. If you want a fabulous birthday cake, you've got choices. But there are certain things that one bakery is known for, like these fabulous iced cookies. They're beautiful to look at and they're absolutely delicious. The other place doesn't have iced cookies. So if you want iced cookies, you're only going to one place. But the other place has these, I haven't had them. The photos are gorgeous. They have these cinnamon buns on the weekends that just look absolutely fabulous. And the place with the iced cookies doesn't have those. You know, so they've found ways to coexist. I think they've learned from each other during the pandemic, to our point, through different methods of delivering product to patrons. But at the same time, they have supported each other in different ways and have learned how to coexist and how to learn from each other. You know, a purchase method and delivery method is, you know, not a trade secret. Is anybody going to give up the recipe for a specific baked good? No. But they're business owners that respect each other and respect each other's, you know, territory in terms of what they offer. But I think they've also learned a lot from each other, and I think it's strengthened both businesses in the long run.
So Karen, don't you also think that this is the opportunity for these businesses, our businesses, to get more involved in the community, like with their business improvement district organizations or business organizations within their community, whose sole purpose is to help the businesses? If you don't know about them now, you should learn about them, because that's what their purpose is, to help businesses. And they were very, in the communities that I'm aware of, they were very active during this pandemic. Even if it was just providing information to businesses about changes in local laws and what time you had to close and those kinds of things, they were very helpful. And it strengthened the relationship with the bids and the business community. Some didn't even know they existed, but it definitely strengthened the relationship, and then that can be ongoing.
Without a doubt, that can be vital to small businesses and really help ensure their success. One of the business improvement happens to have two, and one of them was actually shutting down the main thoroughfare on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday evenings in the warmer weather. They stopped over the winter, but hopefully they'll go back to it. And on those
Mhm.
evenings, restaurants would have outdoor dining, and they were bringing in musicians to play right there in the street. And the street became more of a pedestrian walkway.
Right.
Some of the boutiques and other small businesses would stay open longer. They sponsored on the Saturdays leading up to Christmas. They sponsored outdoor. They also again closed down the main thoroughfare for several hours and engaged small businesses to have them offer products outside and set up tables outside, something that previously was not allowed. But they realized that they needed to help small businesses. And those events were brought about by a combination of the Business Improvement District leaders recognizing the need for small businesses to be supported, and local government saying, what can we do to help? Oh, you want to shut down the main thoroughfare for a few hours on a Saturday afternoon? Great, you got it. Oh, you want us to shut down the main thoroughfare for a few hours on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturday evenings and bring in musicians and we'll get somebody to do face painting for the kids. We'll arrange for musicians to come in. We'll have balloons or, other families to come and walk about and spend a few dollars. Absolutely, being part of the community has absolutely helped small businesses survive in the midst of all this.
Absolutely.
If a small business owner is not currently connected to their local government and other businesses in their community, I strongly encourage it. Chambers of Commerce are good for that. Business Improvement District leaders are good for that. And there can also be opportunities for cross-marketing. So for instance, there's a florist that I know who often volunteers to provide, well, pre-COVID, when we had fundraisers, she would often ask if she could provide flowers for a fundraiser, and she would do little centerpieces and she would leave her business card. And even if the business cards weren't there, people would say, oh, the flowers on the table are so pretty. Where did those come from? Oh, they came from this local florist. And so it was a marketing opportunity. I've seen realtors work with insurance people. So let's say a realtor is having an open house and they want to have cookies on the table for when people come to look at the home. Sometimes an insurance company will sponsor those, will pay for the cookies and essentially sponsor those cookies in exchange for being able to put their business cards out. So, oh, you're looking at a new home. If you have a new home, you're probably going to need new insurance. And so there are opportunities for business owners to find complementary businesses that they can pair with and work together to cross market each other and ultimately reach more customers and hopefully generate more business. About through local government, and others come through industry associations, and others come from other community-based gatherings of business owners, that partnerships and new opportunities.
Good point. Good examples.
All good. All good.
All good.
So Ginny and I also thought about a number of other stakeholders that business owners should think about being in touch with. And a stakeholder can be anyone outside your business who their influence or interaction with them can influence and affect the success of your business. It might be someone that you might collaborate with. It might be someone who provides a service to your business and helps you manage your business better. But stakeholders, working more effectively with various stakeholders who touch your business in some way, shape, or form, absolutely can help you strengthen your business and help you navigate through difficult times. We've touched on a few of these, but I think there are a few more that bear discussion. Yeah. So if you have people that you are partnering with in some way, shape, or form, you probably want to discuss with them how your business is changing and how the two of you can leverage your efforts independently to help support each other through the difficulties. And again, this is applicable not only during the pandemic, but even in economic downturns, whatever might cause them, you want to make sure that you're talking to potential partners or exist about what's going on and what you're seeing and how you can work together. Many small businesses have accountants, and you might need to talk to your accountant. The changes that you've experienced over the past year have had a financial impact on your business, and it might impact your taxes. Maybe you need to withhold less, to pay less in estimated taxes. Maybe you need to do something else to manage your cash flow. Maybe you need capital. Your accountant can talk to you about what you need to do in order to have the capital available to ramp back up. They might advise you on how to seek a line of credit or other capital. They might advise you on cash flow management approaches that can help you make sure that you do have the capital that you need as your business continues, and make sure you're managing your cash flow most effectively. Changes in your business might also require changes to the contracts that you already have in place. Maybe you need to make adjustments to your contracts with your suppliers. If you have contracts with customers, you might need to adjust those. Hopefully, if you do have some sort of business that brings people together face to face, you have some sort of indemnification letter that people have to sign to protect them from suing you and accusing you of giving them COVID, or from them getting COVID when they met with you or engaged with you in your business. You want to make sure you're protecting yourself with any contracts you have or any interpersonal relationships, so that you make sure that your business is protected. Have you seen some of that, Ginny?
Well, of course, I've seen the businesses going to their attorney to make sure that their businesses were solvent in terms of their organizational structure, you know, what their response was to their own stakeholders, to their board of directors, the corporation, et cetera. But I think you bring up a really good point about how this is the time now to really look at these stakeholders. If you don't have them, if you don't call them stakeholders, talk to people who can give you advice in these areas. If you don't have an accountant, seek out prepaid legal, seek out some kind of accounting organization that can talk to you about your books. And we see it now when people go to apply for, when businesses go to apply for these grants and these other stimulus funds. But as far as with contracts with the attorneys, more is, for on my end, it's the contracts that they have with employees, especially higher level of employees, because there's a shift that's taking place and it's going to affect that employee, the company adhering to the contract that they have with the employee. But with the suppliers and the customers, it's important to do these things because you want to stay in business. And
Absolutely.
it's these things that may appear to be incidental to others, but it's these things like checking your contract, especially benefit contracts, making sure that you're not going to be in a position where you have to give them more and you're not making the money to pay for the insurance. And there are these clauses in there that will assist you in doing it. You just have to have somebody look at it for you. Yeah, these are very good points. Makes me think about, the things that I got to look at as well. But these are really good points for our businesses. And Karen, I'm thinking maybe we should make this into a checklist.
A checklist would be very helpful.
So we can, hand that out and give it to them as a checklist.
And I think I think that small business owners should recognize that just because your business is small doesn't mean that you don't need these things. And I'll give you an example. I recently had new headshots done. And so of course, you're not going to do a headshot wearing a mask. And I went to a small photographer and I was asked to sign a COVID release. a waiver saying that if I got COVID, I wasn't going to come back and sue him. Now, I gladly signed it. I understood. I also think it's very hard to say, oh, I got COVID from this particular place, because we're all trying to both be safe and do the things that we have to do, like go to the grocery store, Costco, or wherever your errands take you. But this photographer was a solo practitioner. His business is him. That doesn't mean that he's too small to need a COVID release waiver and have people that are coming into his studio and taking off their mask out of necessity. Like I said, I'm not going to do a headshot where I'm wearing a mask, so I had to take it off, and I accepted that risk and I signed his waiver. And so, depending on how your business interacts with other people, you may need that as well. If you have a house cleaning business, you may need to not only wear a mask when you're cleaning someone's home, but you may need to ask homeowners to sign a release because you're coming into their home and they may think, oh, that person came into my home, I got COVID from them. You want to protect yourself and you want to protect your business, and that's part of what is about. And so you may need to talk to an attorney. So don't think that your business is too small to need something like that.
And I think it's also important for the sole proprietors who work at home to look at your insurance policies, update your insurance policies, especially if you're having people drop things off, or most of the home-based, not most of them, many of them are, they're in the business because of the specialty that they have. And so they're selling that product from their home. And now's the time, it's always the time, but particularly now, is the time to make sure that you're covered. Whether it's your products, whether it's the materials that you're using that you want to be covered in case there's some damage there, or if somebody comes to pick up a product and everybody's leaving things on the front door, your food is on the front door, everything is on the front door. You want to make sure that you're covered by these. So you're absolutely right. It's all organizational structures need to address this issue about what am I liable for?
And are there new liabilities?
Are there new liabilities based on this?
Your insurance coverage might have been sufficient before the pandemic, but changes in your business might have led to new liabilities, and they might have limited liabilities that you don't need to pay for anymore. So it's worth talking to your insurance provider to determine exactly what it is that you need.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thinking about, as we talked about just a couple minutes ago, your community. Who do you need to be connected to in your community and let them know about changes in your business, and see how changes in their business or changes in how they conduct community might affect your business and might help find support for your business.
Right.
I think that that's really important. I think that your community can provide a great deal of support. I know that my community, from the beginning of the pandemic straight through to now, there has been a call for people, encouraging people to support our local restaurants, encouraging us to tip, even if we're picking up food. Waiters, waitresses were dependent upon tips, and now they find themselves as, delivering curbside. Supporting local businesses through how you spend money has been something that's been ongoing. And I think that government agencies and local governments, especially small town governments, have recognized that they need to do what they can in order to support the small businesses in their community. So, any other stakeholders that that we didn't mention here? I think this is a good list, but I suspect that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
No, I think it hits on the key stakeholders for all businesses, for all of them, because without that knowledge, you can really lose your business. Knowing your insurance, knowing the contracts that you have, especially this piece on partners, because unfortunately, it's at these times where partners realize that in their partnership agreements, they don't have who does what. They just have an agreement that we're partners. for me, I always have the partners delineate who takes care of operations and who takes care of other parts of the business, whether it's administration or sales. So, you know, in the event of any disruption, personal, death, you want out of the business, whatever, you know who's supposed to do, who is responsible for what. But I think about your piece with illness that you talked about earlier during this, where these situations where these companies there were partnerships, there were LLPs, and one person got COVID and they were out for a long period of time. There was no plan in place to substitute for what that person was supposed to do. So they lost a large section of their business because those customers depended on, you know, that business, that person rather, to assist them. So, I mean, I think these are all really good points and really good. And how many of our businesses really think of these relationships as stakeholders? But they're invested in your business.
Absolutely. And even if a partnership is an informal partnership, like I described with, you know, realtors and insurance companies, if the realtor is finding that there aren't that many people that are looking to sell their properties, then they have to let the insurance company know, like, you know, I love that you've been sponsoring refreshments at my open houses, but I'm just not having that many. And so there needs to be communication there. And again, it's a two-way street.
Right.
Businesses need to be both communicating with stakeholders and listening to what stakeholders have to say.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good points.
Well, this has been lovely, Ginny.
I think it has too. I think it's the beginning of something, Karen.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
I don't know. Are there any questions?
I was just going to say, here's the contact information, but I want to stop sharing my screen and see in the chat if there are any questions that people have. So let me stop sharing. And if our participants have any questions, feel free to either take yourself off mute and go ahead and ask us, or you're welcome to type something in the chat and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Even if something comes up after this that you want some information about, please feel free to reach out to us. You have our contact information and we are available. So feel free to, you know, to reach out to Karen and I and see how we can assist you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Takoa, do we have any announcements to wrap up? I know we're ending a little bit early, but our Q&A has been a little quiet, so.
Yeah, so let me just pull up our contact information just so everyone can refer back to it.
Sure.
So thank you again, Karen and Ginny, for sharing your knowledge and for your time today. This presentation was very informative. So if you would like to set up a one-on-one appointment with Ginny or Karen, please send us an email and we can set that up, or you can just click on the raise hand button and I will make a note to set that up for you after the webinar has ended. So if there are no more questions, I would just like to direct everyone to the chat. So there you will find some of our upcoming events, as well as our website and the Eventbrite page where you can register for our webinars, workshops, and our events there. Mm-hmm. So feel free to look at that and register for the ones that aligns with your business needs as well as your interests.
I want to put in a special plug for SBDC Day.
Yes.
There are going to be a whole series of business experts that are going to be talking throughout the day. So I encourage you to tune in. Takoa, right? What time does SBDC Day programming start?
It starts at 10 a.m. and it ends at 4 p.m.
So there you go, a whole day of great content.
Information.
Ginny, you're speaking that day, right?
Yes, well, we're doing certifications.
Ginny's going to be talking about certifications. I'm going to be talking about starting a business here in New Jersey. There's a whole host of experts that are going to be talking that day. You'll even hear from some of the entrepreneurs and small business owners that we've worked with over the course of the past year or two. So it's not just an event that, a specific webinar. There's lots of different things to choose from. You can pop in as your calendar, your schedule permits. But you'll hear about a lot of different topics. So I encourage you to take a look at that event and see what fits your schedule, but also will help you take your business to the next level.
Right. Thank you, Karen. And also that event is a live virtual open house. So you'll be able to ask your questions and our experts will answer it for you live. And it's really a good opportunity.
And it's free too, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Most importantly.
Full day event, it's free. Lots of experts to hear from. Absolutely.
Right. So our second event that we are hosting this month is actually a virtual Women's Entrepreneur Network Tea and Talk event. And that one is on March 25th. So this event will allow you to meet role models in business and make contact with professional career women who are power brokers in their private or public professional sectors. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can feel free to register for that as well. And I do suggest that you would maybe copy these links and paste them into a Google document or an email draft, just so that you have these links long after the webinar has ended. But you can always visit our website just to refer back to all these stuff as well. I also want to remind you all that you will be receiving a video replay as well as the presentation slides within 24 to 48 business hours. So you can refer back to the slides and the PowerPoint and the presentation long after. After the webinar has ended, in the browser, you will see a survey pop up. We would really appreciate it if you can just take a few minutes to complete that. That survey will help us to adjust our presentations in the future, as well as give us some information on the kind of assistance you may be needing. So if you have some time, your feedback is much appreciated. And on that note, we will now end this webinar. I want to thank our presenters for today, Jeannie and Karen, for taking the time out again. And thank you all for attending. And we look forward to seeing you at our future webinars.